everybody. Welcome back to another podcast on Fifth Ave. We have some Penguins news this week. It's not the signing news that people were probably hoping for, but this past Tuesday, Casey DeSmith agreed to an extension with the Penguins. It's going to run through the 2023-2024 season, and it's about $1.8 million annually. That is good, bad. How are we feeling about that? Just kind of, it is what it is.
I think it's boring. I mean,
yeah, it is boring.
It's boring. You could do a whole lot worse for a backup, I think, than Casey DeSmith.
Yeah.
Looking at his career numbers, he's in a average, maybe slightly above average backup. For the value, $1.8 million, that's pretty good. His past contract, he was making $1.25. I don't know. So that's $550,000 raise. I don't know what exactly he did to merit a raise, $500,000 when there is such a cap crunch right now.
Yeah.
So but again, if you look at what other backup goalies around the league are signing for, it's not that bad of a value. Injuries may be a concern. I mean, he was unavailable to the Penguins the last two playoffs I don't like saying like a player is injury prone, but DeSmith, it was kind of the same injury the last 2 years. It was he had to have core muscle surgery in May, and then he also had it last off season too. It was the groin both times. It was different sides. So 1 year was like the right side of his groin, and then the other year it was his left side. So I don't know how connected that might be, if one side maybe overcompensates for the other. He did say on clean out day this year that the side of his groin that he had surgery on last year was fine this year, but I don't know if maybe that would have played a role in his groin on the other side getting hurt this year, because when he injured it in the playoffs, that was like the final nail in the coffin, but he said it was something that had bothered him for the last month and a half of the season. So I guess you could say injuries are a concern, but they could do a whole lot worse for a backup. I don't know. I say boring because I guess there maybe are some other interesting names out there, but given the Penguins cap situation, I don't know how feasible that would have been. The name everyone throws out there is Marc-Andre Fleury. People want Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't know if you're going to get Fleury for $1.8 million.
Definitely not. And I was gonna ask, what does that do for all of, because there's going to be rumors until the end of time that Marc-Andre Fleury is potentially going to come back to Pittsburgh, or people are going to want him to come back to Pittsburgh. So the Penguins signing Casey DeSmith, extending that deal for him, do you think that will put a nail in the coffin of the Fleury talk, or do you think that will just keep going?
No, I already saw a tweet saying well, maybe now they can flip Jarry and then open up the number one spot, and then so I think people are always gonna talk about Fleury. I don't see it happening. Jarry does have 1 year left on his contract. Casey too. If we're talking about Fleury as a backup, I don't know if Fleury's gonna play another after 2 years. So and I don't think he'd be a number one to go with Casey at this point. So I think it should put it to rest, but it'll never put it to rest. Just like all the players from Pittsburgh, John Gibson. I still feel like I hear people talk about they should try to trade for John Gibson. Why? Why would Anaheim do that? He's young enough that they get out of a rebuild, he's going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
JT Miller, Vince Trocheck, Brandon Saad, people talk about anyone from Pittsburgh. And Fleury, I guess he was here so long that he's kind of in that same boat. But I don't know. I think people are always going to talk about it. But it's Casey as the backup for the next 2 years. Kind of interesting because they do have goalie prospects coming up through the system. So not anyone that I would say would be ready to come up next year, just because all three of the two that are going to be in Wilkes-Barre are rookies. Taylor Gauthier, coming from the WHL, and Philip Lindbergh, who did play 7 games of the AHL last year and then got hurt. He's really going to be a rookie next year. And then Joel Blomqvist over in Finland. They have 3 pretty solid goalie prospects. I don't know if they'll be ready next year, but I mean, what happens if they're ready 2 years from now, in the last in the last year of Casey's deal, they'd be cheaper. So maybe he gets. They could like flip him and still bring one of these guys up, but that's a long ways away from now.
Yeah, that's not very soon, and they have options, and it's just very unexciting. It's just a move that felt like, okay, they're sort of giving us an idea of what the goaltending situation is going to look like next year, which is exactly what it looked like last year, and it wasn't terrible this year. Goaltending was kind of the problem in the postseason, but it wasn't the same problem as they had the last couple of years, which was shaky goaltending. It was they were playing with a third string guy because both of their, Jari and DeSmith were injured. So yeah, injury definitely a concern with Casey DeSmith, but the new hires and the new internal promotions, maybe that won't be an issue. Hopefully, maybe they can work on that with Casey DeSmith. I guess we can't quite write him off just yet. And he did look good down the stretch this past season. It wasn't like he looked earlier on, because there were even some questions if he was even competent enough. But he did kind of turn it around. I remember us talking about that kind of mid-season, like, holy crap, what do we do? What do they do?
It was January in Columbus was when he turned it around, because he got pulled like 2 games in a row. That's when everyone's talking like, bring Louis up, give him a shot, just because like what happens if we get towards the end of the season and the playoffs and you need him, you should probably know what you have in him.
Yeah,
they ended up needing him in the playoffs, but Casey, he did have a really rough first half of the season. He did turn it around. So looking at the rest of the free agents they have, they are prioritizing obviously Letang and Malkin in that order. DeSmith was obviously a little bit separate from that because you need a backup goalie.
Yeah.
Anyway, like
that's unaffected.
It really doesn't affect what they have, for those guys. This leaves them with just about 21.4 million left. So that's at 2 goalies. Goalies are done. They have 6 defensemen and 9 forwards. So, if they're going to sign Letang, it would have to be, Letang and then 3 other forwards, maybe one of them Malkin. So if you bring back those 2 core guys, you're still going to need 2 forwards. That's assuming Zahorna and O'Connor are on the roster. So, I don't know, someone like Rodriguez Heinen we might just see back because they're going to be affordable. Or, there's going to be a million depth guys in free agency. I still think it's possible that, Letang Malkin come back and they can complete the roster. Obviously, we talked about Marcus Pettersson, a likely candidate for a trade, and that is something that the front office is actually talking about with Pettersson specifically. Yeah. So, DeSmith, a little surprising to see him get a raise, but it doesn't ruin anything.
Yeah.
But it does give us a clearer picture of where things stand cap-wise, looking at, filling out the skaters.
Yeah, for sure. And we're less than 2 weeks away from the start of free agency. So it's going to be fascinating to follow the next couple weeks. And it might be eventful. It might not. I don't know. Only time will tell. But it's sort of slowly coming together, but not in the ways that people have been wanting to see, unfortunately. But yeah, Casey DeSmith's coming back. He's getting paid more, and that, I don't know. There you go. Yeah, like kind of boring, like we've been saying. Nothing all that thrilling. It just kind of is what it is. Why don't we take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We are back. The NHL draft begins Thursday, July 7th. Pretty exciting just overall, but it feels like the season just ended because it did just end. We are right into it. So, Taylor, what can we look forward to with the Penguins? Kind of who do they have their sights set on, and who are they hoping to get?
Well, I mean, first of all, they have a first-round pick for the first time since 2019. So that alone, very exceptional. It's the 21st overall pick is their pick in the first round. That's also the pick they had in the first round in 2019 when they took Sam Poulin. This is the 5th time in team history they've picked 21 before pulling in Colby Armstrong. So
all right.
Colby Armstrong was the 21st overall. Just looking at real quick the other picks they have. They have 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. The second round pick went to Anaheim in the Raquel trade. The third round pick went to LA in the Jeff Carter trade. So after that first round pick, they're going to be pretty, not a whole lot going on to start day 2. But as far as the first round pick is, I mean, that's all anyone wants to talk about. They always pick the best player available, so it's not necessarily drafting by like position. Like you look at, right-handed defensemen. It would be great if they could get a good right-handed defenseman, just because that is an area of weakness in the prospect pool. But that's not how you approach the draft, especially when you have a pick this high. You're just looking to pick the best asset, because so much can change by the time these guys do make it up there. And also, I mean, one of the reasons they try to go for the best asset is because it's always like a trade piece too. So like, you look back when they took Callie Klang and Joel Blomqvist, 2 goalies back to back in 2020. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but then one of them just becomes a trade piece.
Yeah.
So that's why you take the best player available. And I mean, there are a lot of intriguing names. It's kind of normally, mid-late first round, it's kind of a crapshoot predicting these guys, but I think it feels like more so this year. I don't know how much, just COVID has an impact on that, because so many of these players, they maybe had like lost seasons or, shortened seasons, less opportunities for teams to scout them. And, the guys in Europe, maybe, scouts weren't going over there, traveling around as frequently as they may have been. So I don't know if that's a big part of why things are, I guess, kind of up in the air, where the, Penguins pick, like going back to 2019, I always do like an article, like predicting the Penguins, who the Penguins pick it, wherever the first pick in the draft is. And in 2019, I was pretty confident that I had a guy, I picked like maybe 7 or 8 guys. I was pretty confident that I had him on there, and it was Poulet, and I had him in my article. I did one of those this year too, not quite as confident that I got it. There are a lot of guys who maybe started out high and then fell. Some guys rose their stock, so lots up in the air. One intriguing name I want to talk about, Brad Lambert. He's Finnish. I don't know how he's named Brad Lambert if he's Finnish, but
yeah, it's a very American name.
I think he Canadian. Like his family's Canadian. He's playing in Finland now. So he was, he's a forward. He can play both center and wing. He was initially, like you go back months ago, a year ago, predicted to go like top 5. Very skilled, and like he was producing well. So the 2020-21 season, he was in the top Finnish league, as like a 17-year-old, which is crazy impressive. And he actually was producing fairly well for a rookie in that league. 15 points in 46 games playing against grown men. Teams always love to see that. That's one of the benefits of these European guys, is how well do they play against grown men. He has size, 6 foot, 183 pounds. So I mean, he could stand to put on a little bit of weight, but not a concern. But then coming into this year, production kind of dropped off. He played at 2 different teams, so he had 24 games with the team that he was with the year before. He only scored 2 goals, 4 assists, and then he moved to the Pelicans in that same league. 25 games, 2 goals, 2 assists. They got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. No points in 3 games, so that kind of hurt his draft stock, and that's why he's now kind of projected to go mid to late first round.
Okay.
He, given just how good he was the year before, if he's around, I think that's something you absolutely take. And just hope, because I mean, he's shown he has it in him to play that way.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, I didn't have him on my list when I first put it together, because I did it, I don't know, like a month ago, and I think the thinking at the time is like he still might not be around at 21. Now it seems like maybe he might be around at 21 in the Penguins pick. Still not super confident that he's going to be there, but if he is, I mean, I would I would take him. The other name that's really interesting to me, Ivan Russian Miroshnichenko. I think I'm leaving out a syllable in there. It's very long.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Let's roll with
Ivan. I'm sure his nickname's Miro. We'll call him Miro. He's a left wing.
Okay.
He's the one that, he was originally supposed to be very high too. Looking up at, Sportsnet, their rankings in February, he was supposed to go number 9. And then in March, he got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's the same form of cancer that Mario Lemieux had. So, when they first announced that, he was supposed to miss the entire, this coming season. Some projections then had him dropping to the second round. But then at the scouting combine in Buffalo, he wasn't there, but the central scouting director said that he had completed his cancer treatments. He's been given the green light to resume training, and he's expected to play next season. So probably not going to go like number 9-ish like they originally thought, but he's probably not. He'd be a good pick at the mid-late first round at this point. So if he's still around, I'd absolutely take him too. He was in the Russian second league last year, the VHL. That's it's just like the minor league for the KHL. So that's where he was. He was for Omsk, 10 goals, 6 assists, 31 games. He was I pulled up a scouting report from this is from Muskegon in the USHL. He was supposed to go there for the 2020-21 season, but then because of COVID, he didn't end up going. Their coach called him an elite skater. He hits like a truck, and he has an unbelievable shot. So, that just kind of checks all the boxes.
Sounds compelling, yeah.
Bob McKenzie did also say he has a solid two-way game with no discernible shortcomings in his toolbox. And, that's encouraging because a lot of times guys coming from these different European leagues, maybe their two-way game isn't there. I think maybe especially that's a stereotype of like Russian players. But apparently not a shortcoming of his, so he's another intriguing pick. But this article, if anyone wants to like see like the full list, I have like kind of scouting reports and projections for each of these guys. There are a bunch of different guys who could go around this range, and a bunch of interesting names. Names. Right wing out of the WHL, who I have on this list, Jagger Fergus. That's his name.
Oh, okay.
I've heard all I need to hear. Jagger Fergus.
Yeah.
A little bit smaller. He's the guy who like rose his stock. He was originally supposed to, early projections had him going like early third round. Now he's actually supposed to go, in the first round. So Jagger Fergus, another name.
Wow, what a name.
Jimmy Snuggerud. He's coming from the U.S. National Team Development Program. A lot of good players come out of there every year. He's a big forward, 6'2", 185. Sounds like maybe like a power forward type. But, a lot of interesting names here. A couple that currently play with Penguins prospects currently, so we know they're guys that the Penguins scouts had eyes on, because when they're watching their own prospects, they're also seeing these guys. The two that I have down that are like that, Tristan Luneau, defenseman from the Gatineau Olympics and the QMJHL. He is a right-handed shot defenseman, so that would be very interesting. The Penguins prospect who is on Gatineau is Isaac Beliveau, their 2021 fifth-round pick. They were briefly a pairing because Beliveau's a left-handed shot, but they weren't primarily together. But Luneau is another guy who is maybe supposed to go a little bit higher. He had his draft stock kind of impacted by just having off-season surgery last year and then missing some time this year. So he might be a good guy to keep an eye on. The other one who plays with the Penguins prospect, this past season is a left shot defenseman, Kevin Krasinski, out of Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL. So he was teammates with Lucas Svejkovsky, who is one of their top forward prospects right now, just because there are so few.
Yeah.
But he's kind of expected to go in this range. He was like a late bloomer. He finished number 3 overall in team scoring this season for Seattle, 22 goals, 24 assists, 33 games. His plus 36 rating was first among defensemen and second overall in the WHL. And then, but looking at last year, he had 10 assists in 23 games. So the offensive production really just came out of nowhere. So very intriguing. Just, kind of a short sample size with that, but he'd be an interesting pick too. But a lot of options.
A lot of options. And like you said, it's just exciting that they do have a first round draft pick, because in the past decade or so, those have been few and far between. So we'll find out this coming Thursday, the 7th, where the Penguins end up landing on that 21st pick in the draft. It will be exciting. Looking forward to seeing who they can get. Let's take one more break and we'll be right back. And we're back. Another just general name to keep an eye on for the NHL draft this upcoming Thursday is Logan Cooley. He's a prospect from the Pittsburgh area, actually. And Taylor and I were talking in the break. When I pulled up his information, I saw the year 2004, and I thought, how's he a prospect this year if he started playing hockey in 2004? No, that was the year he was born. So that made me feel really old. But what can you tell us about him, besides the fact that he's from Pittsburgh? And it's always exciting to see guys come through the hockey pipeline in Pittsburgh and make it to this point in their career.
Yeah, so he's from West Mifflin specifically, and he's going to be the highest drafted player from the Pittsburgh area. He's probably going to go in the top 3. The top 3 right now is very up in the air, but it's safe to say he's either going to be playing in Montreal, New Jersey, or Arizona. The highest drafted player from Pittsburgh right now, JT Miller from Chronopolis. He was picked by the Rangers, number 15 overall in 2011. So even if Logan Cooley does go like number 3 or even drops a little, he probably won't. But he's going to be the highest drafted player from Pittsburgh.
That's cool.
Forward, he can play both center and wing. He's coming from the U.S. National Team Development Program. And he's going to go to the University of Minnesota next year. So he's going the college hockey route, so he's not going to be going pro right away. But he's a two-way center, very skilled. He had a Michigan goal at the U18 World Championship. But one of the most interesting things about him, he got his start skating in Crosby's Little Penguins Learn to Play program. He was one of the inaugural Little Penguins. Like, Crosby started program, spearheaded it. 2008 was the first year, and it's for kids, like 4 to like, I think the age ranges have changes, but whatever. He was like 3 or 4 when he did it. He was one of the very first kids to come through that program, and for the Little Penguins program, for people who don't know, it's Pittsburgh area kids. They provide free equipment, which hockey equipment, it's so expensive, so it just makes the game much more accessible for people to play. Like now Logan Cooley, he does come from like a hockey family, so like his older brothers, play, but Crosby's Little Penguins program is where he first started skating. And Crosby, he does skate with like the Little Penguins kids every year. Now Logan Cooley, he did say that something like Crosby would have been out there skating with him when he was 4 years old. He said he doesn't remember it too well, like actually being out there with Crosby, because he said he was just focused on trying to stand up at that age on his skates. And so it's just really cool to see that kind of program play off. And given that he was from the first program, now that those kids are getting older and draft age, it's going to be interesting to see how many more kids come out of Pittsburgh. Like Logan Cooley, he also did play for the Pittsburgh Penguins Elite program, the youth system they have. And that program too has grown a lot in recent years, and the products that are coming out of there, and like adding teams. We had we had Sean Sweezum on. He's a coach on the girls side of that, and they added like a 12U and 14U girls a second team just because of the growth of hockey in this area, and we're seeing that on the boys side too. And so Logan Cooley, he was a product there. So now, so he's a two-way center, and you'd figure, I don't know, coming from the Little Penguins program, maybe model his game after Crosby. He said Patrick Kane, which doesn't really line up, but okay. Patrick Kane is somebody who tries to emulate, but then his favorite player is Ovechkin. So he's like, I'm pretty sure he's like a Caps fan. So yeah,
low key.
You look at like the last kind of wave of Penguins, players to come out, Pittsburgh players to come out of here, like Brandon Saad, Vince Trocheck, JT Miller, John Gibson, all in like 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Those guys were talking about like Mario, like watching Mario growing up towards the end of Mario's career. Obviously, they're a little bit older, but and now this wave is like the Crosby generation, especially given that coming from his program. So just cool to see. Something he did say too is like he hopes he helps cement Pittsburgh's status as more of a hockey town, because I mean obviously it's like a Penguins town, like that's not in question, but as a city with a reputation for producing high profile players, there really haven't been many. You can like first round picks or guys who've played long NHL careers. There haven't been a ton. So for him to go top 3, that's just huge for kind of just like the reputation of the city. Here he'll inspire more little kids too, knowing I mean he's from West Mifflin and he came from Little Penguins and the Penguins elite. So just very cool for the city.
Absolutely. And I think like you mentioned, the fact that we have such a high profile player in Sidney Crosby, one of the best of all time, to be in Pittsburgh and not just playing here, but invested in the growth of hockey as a sport in general. That generates interest in the sport that I don't think necessarily was there. And he's making it more accessible to people who may not have been able to afford it before, because like you said, it's very expensive. I know my brother played hockey for like 1 or 2 years in high school, and it just blew my mind how much of an investment that was. And there's just not much that schools provide in the way of equipment, whereas sports like football and baseball, that's just kind of all given to them. And the fact that, again, we have a guy who has invested, it just creates an interest in kids who are growing up to be like, oh, I can do that and I want to do that. And I think we will potentially see a surge in the next maybe 10, 20 years of players who grew up watching Sid play and caring about the Penguins, and then as a result caring about hockey, because it's something that just kind of trickled down from the way that he poured into the community here. So that's exciting. And that's huge. That I didn't know much about him besides the fact that he was from Pittsburgh, but knowing that he's going to go top 3 for probably, like that's a big deal, and that's big for Pittsburgh, and it's exciting for the city that like, yeah, we're starting to hang with the other places. We're not that far behind.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously I said Penguins town, but places like cities in Minnesota or like Boston, and that also produce hockey players, and have like strong college programs too. And like we're seeing like Robert Morris, they got their program back. So just a great time for Pittsburgh hockey in general right now.
Absolutely. It's exciting, and it's fun to be a part of it and be immersed in it, living in the city. And again, the NHL draft is going down. It's starting this Thursday, the 7th. So watching a hometown boy get drafted, watching the Penguins have a first round pick, it's going to be a good time, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you, as always, everybody, for listening. We drop new episodes of Podcast on Fifth Ave every single week, so make sure you're subscribed wherever it is you listen, whether it's just the podcast route or it's on YouTube. We drop videos over there as well. We'll see you next week for another new episode.